guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gareth. I'm so excited for today's video because I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books I've read this year so far. This year being January 1st to today is March 17th. I have kept track of the books I've read this year. I wrote a list. I have read the entire Lunar Chronicles series, which is Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter. I've read the Inheritance Games, which includes 4 books. The first poster just fell off my wall. I've read the entire Inheritance Games series, which includes the Inheritance Games, the Hathorn Legacy, the Final Gamut, and the Brothers Hathorn. I've read The Chalice of the Gods, which is a new Percy Jackson book. I have read Heartless by Marissa Mayer, who's also the same person that wrote the Lunar Chronicles. I have read Fairest and Stars Above, which is, Fairest is a prequel to the Lunar Chronicles, and Stars Above is kind of, it's not a part of the series, but it's like a collection of short stories, I guess. And then I have read the first 2 A Good Girl's Guide to Murder books, and I'm currently reading the 3rd one, which is As Good as Dead. Out of all the books that I mentioned, these are the ones that I actually own. So the other books I cannot show you because they are from the library and I don't have them anymore, but these ones I can show you. Start off with the first book that I have read this year, which is called Cinder. Cinder, I feel like this series, The Lunar Chronicles, was such a good start to this year. As like my first book that I read in 2024. And that is because it kind of takes place in like one of my favorite genres. It's dystopian. It's like kind of like a dystopian fantasy, and it has like a really small romance subplot. So in the Lunar Chronicles, the world is split up into 2 parts in a way. Normal people and these people named cyborgs who have like basically kind of like robot limbs. Cinder is a cyborg, and there is an evil dictator of the moon, and the people on the moon are called Lunars, and evil dictator is named Queen Levana. Basically, the first book follows the main character Cinder, and it's very loosely based off of Cinderella. But there's a prince named Kai, and he like kind of like invites her to the royal ball. But she's a cyborg, and cyborgs are kind of like looked down on upon the normal people. Also, I forgot to mention, but there's like a deadly plague going around. So basically, each book follows a new character, so there's Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter. Basically try and stop Levana because she's like this evil dictator. Okay, so that's basically the Lunar Chronicles series for you. I think this series, for my rating, it was a really good series. I know a lot of people, like, they stand by this series. This is their favorite series to ever exist. Personally, for me, I think it was an amazing series. Like, it was a really good start for my reading this year. It wasn't my favorite series, but it was really, really good. The beginning is a little bit slow, but I think once it starts getting fast-paced, then it just really like takes off from there. It's not my favorite series, but it still is a really good series. So I'm gonna rate it 4.5 stars. I'm not gonna rate the prequel in the collection of short stories just because I feel like it wouldn't be fair because it's not really following the storyline. It's just kind of like background knowledge and like, yeah. The next series is the Inheritance Games. Ooh. You might have seen this series on Book Talk or BookTube. I don't have the 4th book, unfortunately, but I do have the first 3. I will literally take a bullet for this series. I have read so many good books, but genuinely, compared to this series, oh my god, I don't even care about anything else. If the world was ending and I had to save one series, it would be this one. These are my favorite books I have ever read. If you have not read them, go read them right now. What are you doing? This is 6 out of 5 stars. Like, this can't even be 5. It doesn't deserve 5 stars. It deserves 6. Okay, that's how good it is. It is the best series I've read in my entire life. I love it with my entire heart. It basically is a mystery with a subplot of romance. Basically, this girl, Avery, she is a poor teenager who lives in her car. Her older sister named Libby has custody of her. At school one day until she gets called into the office and she is informed that this man, she has no clue who he is, named Tobias Hathorne, has left her in his will. Tobias Hathorne is the 7th richest man in America. He disinherited his entire family, who grew up believing that they would inherit his massive fortune and his mansion, and he left it all to Avery. Basically, in this book, they're trying to figure out why he left all of his money to Avery. The only catch that Avery has to like get the money is that she has to live in his massive mansion for a year straight. It's so good. I personally love mystery books, but even if you don't like mysteries, this book, I still will recommend it to you because it's so good. I finished all 3 of these books. Oh, my mom is calling me. One sec. Hello?
Do you want a waffle now or later?
Later.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Love you. Okay. These 3 books and the 4th one, which I got from the library, in 2 days. I read these 2 books in a day, these 2 books in a day, and then I read this book and the 4th one in another day. I finished the series over a weekend. That's how good it was. I literally could not put it down. I forgot I was reading, like, honestly. When I was reading this series, I didn't remember the fact that I was literally reading a book. I was just in a completely different world. In this series, I will never, ever, ever stop recommending it to people because it is the most amazing series I have read in my life. The writing is genius. The characters are genius. The plot is genius. The plot twists are genius. Yeah, now you know how I feel about this series. Very strongly. Next book, I might get hate for this, okay? This is gonna be so insanely controversial. I don't enjoy it at all. In my opinion, I read the entire Percy Jackson series, but in my opinion, it feels like Rick Riordan, he is making more problems and making more quests for Percy, so that way he can make more money off the series. And of course, like, I can't hate for that. Like, that's what, like, do what you gotta do, you know? But if you're gonna make more books than necessary, at least make them good. Because in this book, it was funny, it was nice, I liked it. But the whole time, it felt very pointless because it felt like I was just reading something that was being terribly dragged out. I feel like the series could have stopped on the last book. But nope, we had more books. Maybe it's because Percy Jackson is meant for kids younger who wouldn't really care about the plot being dragged on this much. But, I mean, if you're going to drag on a plot, at least make it interesting when you do. But this book, I feel like I was just following Percy, Annabeth, and Grover doing stuff, and none of it really came as a challenge to them. None of it really interested me. There wasn't really many plot twists at all, and if there was, it was really small. And personally, it was just not a book I would recommend. Honestly, it just didn't stick in my mind. You knew that they were gonna always get it in the end because there's no challenges. Like, you knew that they were always gonna win in the end because they always have to win because they're the heroes. I feel like it would have been more interesting to see them fail at a quest than to just see them succeed and do it with ease every single time. I was so excited for this book to come out because this is one of the books that really got me into reading. But, this was just kind of a disappointment, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. I love the rest of the Percy Jackson series. But this book just felt terribly dragged out. It's the next book I'm reviewing, and I cannot give a proper review of this book because I have not finished it. Yeah, I was so excited to read this book this book series because I thought I was going to love it so much. I thought it was going to be great because I love the Percy Jackson series. But this series, or this book at least, was extremely boring in my opinion because it felt just like insanely, like there was no purpose to any of the stuff that was happening at all. I have something to add about this book. I feel like the reason why this was so much more boring than the other books was because there wasn't really a big problem that they faced. Yes, they faced a bunch of minor little problems, but it wasn't like Camp Half-Blood was at stake. The world was gonna go to war. Yeah, like, Percy, the worst thing that would happen was Percy and Annabeth went to different colleges. I've tried to read this so much. I cannot force myself to pick this book up. This book made reading feel like a chore for me. I love the Percy Jackson series. I loved Rick Riordan's writing, but I don't know why I hate this series so much because it bored me to death. I'm gonna rate these two books. This is gonna be 3 stars because it was good. It was a dragged out book, but it wasn't necessarily bad. This book I can't even rate because I haven't finished it, but if I had to rate it based off of what I've read so far, it's like 2 stars. The next book I'm moving on is Heartless by Marissa Mayer. Author of Heartless is the same person that wrote the Lunar Chronicles. I don't have the book, but here it is. This is what it looks like in case you want to know. Basically, it follows this girl named Kath, and it is a love story between her, who is basically, it's kind of a retelling of the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland, except you don't need to have really any knowledge of Alice in Wonderland before you read this book, except for the Queen of Hearts currently is like this really evil person who like hates everything, and it's basically how the Queen of Hearts got to be this evil person. I have read so many books, okay? But I have never read a book that made me feel this sad. I actually started crying while reading this book. It is the most heartbreaking book I have ever read. It's called Heartless, and it left me heartless at the end because it was so sad. I have like a little poster of it over there. I'll zoom in when I'm editing, but it's like above my Stranger Things one, right there. I have never read a book this sad. I used up like an entire box of tissues while reading this. This book caused me damage. I don't know how I like recovered after reading that book because that was literally the most insane book of my life. I highly recommend you read it if you want to read a fantasy retelling romance book that will leave you very sad. Then read Heartless. It was such an insane book. The plot twist was insane. The beginning was a little bit slow, like the Lunar Chronicles, but it was still such a good book that didn't even matter at the end because it was so good that it didn't even matter that it had like a kind of slow beginning because once it picked up fast. I'm gonna have to rate that book a good 5 stars because it was so insane. I fainted and died halfway through. It left me sobbing at the end. So, if you want a book that will literally make you cry, read Heartless by Marissa Mayer. And the last books that I'm going to be reviewing is the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. So I have read the first 2 books, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder and Good Girl Bad Blood, but I got them from the library, so I don't have them, but I do have the 3rd book, which I just started reading yesterday, actually. I am this far into it. This is how much I've read. So far, it is really good. I forgot to actually explain what the series is about, so this is editing me, and I'm coming back to tell you guys what it's about. So the first book follows the main character named Pip. She lives in a small town called Fairview, and there's this girl named Andy Bell who's allegedly murdered by her boyfriend who then herself. However, Pip believed that Sal, who was the boyfriend, was innocent and that there was a little more something going on here. So she decided to reopen the case without police help and all by herself tried to solve the murder of who actually killed Andy Bell. That was just the first book, but the story really progressed from there, and it turned into so much more, and I think it was just so good, and the character development is better than anything I've ever seen before. Really love Pip's character development throughout the series, because in the first book she's just this good girl who just is trying to solve a murder case for her project. But in this book, she is a completely changed person who feels like she's this insane, kind of obsessive girl, and she's not really the good girl she once thought she was. And I love that. And I also love the the plot, because the plot twists are insane in this book. I got out of my seat, I screamed, I jumped while reading this series. The plot twists were just so insane, like I can't even believe half of the stuff happened. I recommend this if you liked the Inheritance games, because it's very different from the Inheritance games, but at the same time it's kind of similar. So yeah, I'm gonna rate this series a 4.5 stars, because it was really good. I really love it, and I think it created kind of like a love for mystery for me, because the Inheritance games kind of started my mystery like love, but now this series, like I can like say with pretty good confidence that mystery, dystopian, and fantasy are like my favorite book genres. Anyways guys, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. Bye!